Hey folks, welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and it's Paladins of the West Kingdom. This has had a lot of buzz from bloggers and players alike. I grabbed my copy at Essen after ordering it on Kickstarter, but it's just recently hit retail release. Not a huge amount of difference between the two, to be honest, so I'm not going to worry about comparisons really. Certainly nothing is missing from a retail version that's going to affect your enjoyment of the game. So Paladins of the West Kingdom is a sequel to an aforementioned Architects of the West Kingdom. This was a game that I put, I think, at the top of my 2018 list the year before, and then on the retrospective list it got to something like 2 or 3. This is still a fantastic worker placement game, you know. I mean, Raiders of the North Sea is already a really good one. This is even better than that one, and it puts a twist on the worker placement mechanic while still keeping it mid-weight level, still keeping it like relatively streamlined, allowing a good amount of variety, and looks the business. Main problem, the box. We're definitely going to get onto that one a bit later. But Paladins of the West Kingdom is a sequel to Architects, but very much more Euro-y, very much more point salad-y in its operation. Now, trying to give a rough overview of this, you are effectively using a deck of cards that you have in front of you of these Paladins. Each one gives you a temporary boost to some attributes that you're leveling up for points, but these attributes also allow you to do various actions on your player board, and you need faith to do this, you need strength to do this, and influence to do other ones. The Paladin also gives you a special ability for the round, but you decide out of drafting 3 from your deck and picking one, which one you want to have for the round. Once that's done, you then get the 2 special workers that are on the top of them. They're just different colour meeples. Doesn't matter what colour they are, the theme is kind of a hit and miss in this one, to be honest, but blue, green, black, you know, whatever. The only difference is that white is generic and purple is a wild card, but there's a downside. Taking that purple will get you suspicion, and suspicion works a bit like in Architects with the whole, like, too many people in prison thing. Too much suspicion equals debt. After which you draft another card from a row of cards which are basically giving you more workers. So 4 different colour workers. You will eventually start with 6 plus any you saved from the previous round. And in using these workers, you're doing various actions on your board that require different colour workers. Some require at least 3, some require 2, but you can develop these spaces in order to make them like cheaper. So instead of 3 meeples, it now only requires 2. They need different colours, and you basically have to use your meeples in all these different ways to combo like the most efficient turns possible to, of course, amass victory points and end up with the most at the end of the game.
Of course!
And of course, you can do pretty much what you like with these actions in order to get points. You've got 6 different actions on your board, ranging from anything to building walls, to attacking outsiders, to converting them to your cause, to absolving you of sin. You know, various things like that, which, like I say, are more point-wise, they're more mechanical than they are thematic. But as well as this, you've also got some King's Order cards on the center board. You've got some, you know, villagers who are a bit like the apprentices from Architects. You can basically discard them for an immediate bonus, or you can hire them into your own sort of village and, you know, get a special ability from them each round. You know, very much like the Architect apprentices. And on top of that, you know, there's just occasional little actions that will pop up as the rounds go by that allow you to do other things, which are shuffled randomly into the game. Of course, the main crux is that you need to juggle what workers you have with what color, when you're going to use them, how efficient your actions are going to be, as well as the idea that your 3 attributes which are tracked up the side of your board obviously dictate whether you're able to do those actions and how well you can do them. So, as you get from a very rough overview, there's quite a lot to discuss in this game. I could do a whole rules video on this thing or something if I wanted to go into too much detail. This is definitely a much heavier version, a much heavier game in this series. Raiders of the North Sea had explorers and shipwrights. Don't really bother with those, to be honest. This one had Architects, now it's got Paladins. They haven't announced the 3rd one yet, but hopefully it'll be good. But it's going along that series, so aesthetically, still looks the business. You've got lots of wooden colour meeples. You've got very good artwork from the same guy who did the artwork on this one, and on Architects, that is. You know, so I mean, for crying out loud, look at the box. Yeah, you can almost not tell them apart just from the way it's arranged on the picture. But, you know, everything looks cool. You have to kind of like this style of artwork. Personally, I think it's colourful. I think it's pretty vibrant on the table. It certainly gets looks from people as they come over. All these different colour meeples in pots around the table. They're not in the box, but, you know, everybody has, like, pots for a game. So all these piles of meeples everywhere. You've got coins, metal if you got the Kickstarter upgrade. I suppose that's the main difference. Just you've got some cosmetic upgrades. That's about it. but it's a pretty striking game on the table. However, it's also a huge table hog. I mean, wow. You know, your table better be huge. It better be like this Geekison table. And even then, you better be efficient with your placements. This one takes up a lot of space on your table because you have got the center board. You've got cards all the way around this board. You've got your own player board, which is not a small thing. In fact, I dare say it's bigger than the player board, the middle board. And then you've got cards that have got to go underneath that and on top of that and to the side. You've got your Paladin deck. I know your storage of meeples and money and provisions. I mean, oh my god, this thing takes up so much room on your table that it is a fundamental problem when you end up in anywhere that's outside a convention or a decent gaming sized table, like a kitchen table. This is definitely not one for traveling with, put it that way. I'm also going to quickly talk about the box size. Oh my god. If you thought the box size was good with Architects and Raiders of the North Sea, then fair enough. Although this one is bulging because I've got the print and play expansion in here and it's barely fitting. You know, it just about fit with the base game. Now with the expansion, it's barely fitting. This was with Architects though. Raiders of the North Sea with the expansions doesn't all fit in one box. I've had to take components out of that box in order to put them in storage because I don't really need them. But again, I had to do some tweaking in order to get that to all fit in the box. This little square box is fine, but apart from being able to store a little bit extra on your Calyx shelf, there's only so much you're gaining from this. The box for Paladins of the West Kingdom is too small. Way too small. Everything is jam-packed in there when it's already shrink-wrapped and ready for you to open. When you get everything out, I've had to perform a serious, like, Tetris, extravaganza here to get everything in this box. And that is without sleeving cards. You will not be able to fit this game in this box when you sleeve cards. If you've done it, I can't understand how you could possibly do it without some serious Tetris skills or like major setup time issues or something. Because I haven't put any weird boxes in here. They're just bags. These are just little bags with the people in them. Nothing major. The cards are not sleeved. There's just a lot of boards that take up the space in the box. And then when you shove everything else on top, it's just insane. I can just about fit everything with, without sleeving the cards. But even then, I have to be careful how I pack the box away. Seriously, I know you've got this thing about these size boxes, but, you can't really change it for the third one in this series. You're stuck with it. But if you do another series of games, Garphill games, could you please make bigger boxes? Yes, I don't like storing or buying air, but I like to be able to put the thing back in the box from which it came. And it's just, God blimey, you must have known this box was temperamental. I mean, how did you pack this away when you had it at your site?
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
I don't know. It's not. It's a bit of an annoyance, I'll admit. Not the worst of issues, but you're definitely going to have to bear in mind, guys, that you're not sleeving these cards. At least not likely. I mean, I'm not sleeving mine. I'm not going to go through the hassle of trying to work out how to pack it after that. It's a lot harder to put this one away than it was Architects. So, okay, a couple of little ranty bits there. What else other than aesthetics are good? Well, certainly, if you were looking for more meat, it's definitely a lot here. The rules themselves are not as complicated as they could be, but there's a lot of options. You've got at least about 6 different major actions on your board, but then you've got these little minor ones here on the side, and then you've got the actions on the main board. And then in terms of paths to victory, or like what you're going to go for, am I going to build walls, fortify my position? Am I going to go and develop all my spaces? Am I going to convert loads of outsiders? Am I just going to straight up kill them? Or should I do commissioning and garrisoning, which is basically just plopping a little building or person on the board and get a bonus? It's very much like a generic point salad. Now, the paths to victory are varied, but there is a caveat with this. In order to do well in this game, you have to perform a kind of like a little, a kind of seesaw type thing with the spaces that you're using. So, for example, you do commissioning and it requires black. Or, it requires black and gives blue or something like that, for example. That means, ideally, if you're doing another action on the board, you want it to use blue and ideally reward black. Or at least use blue, because you want the two to, gel with each other. If you try to do a path to victory where you're using, polar opposite colours, then you're not going to do well enough in this game to win. It's like saying, right, I'm going to use this one that requires faith and gives blue. And I'm going to do this action that also requires faith and gives red. Oh, wait, how do I up my black skill so I can actually do these things. You know, it won't work. You know, you'd have to find some really crafty runaround, and I'm not even sure there's any way in the game you can make that work well enough to actually do well in the game. So as much as it looks like, oh my god, I got so many different actions I can do, you kind of work out that there's only so many pairs of actions that work well in conjunction with each other, which does pretty much cut the path to victory in half. You know, so, and you're kind of deciding what you're doing from the start of the game. It's like, you know, what am I going to do? These two things, right? Go with it. Next game, you'll say, well, I'll do these two things now. You have to basically pick a path and stick with it. No diversification, no, you know, like deciding, oh, you know what, I've changed my mind halfway through the game. No, you have to stick with your strategy from the minute you get started, because otherwise you will do badly. You cannot do everything in this game. I mean, that's a good thing. You know, you want to do everything, but you can't. So it's making you make interesting choices about what to do with these color workers and how to micromanage your resources effectively. And it's interesting decision making, you know, for doing that. I just wish that maybe you could do a little bit more on the variety side in terms of paths to victory, because as I say, do the pairs, get that seesaw thing going. Otherwise, it's a very limp seesaw, I admit, but you know, otherwise it's not going to go down too well. Now, the length of the game is not bad. I find it takes a good 2 hours at least, though, to play this game with, you know, a multiplayer setting, and it can go a little bit long when it gets past that 2 hour mark. I feel like I'm kind of done by the time I get past 2 hours, and this will easily, like for a 4-player game, last you a good 2.5 hours at least, if not more, possibly even 3. It can take a long time for everybody to do their turns, for everybody to finish using what meeples they've got, especially if you've finished your turn like 3 turns earlier than someone else, you're just sitting there waiting. It can drag on a little bit, I found. But the main problem with the multiplayer side of it is that, whereas Architects is one of those few games where I said, you know what, I need as many players as I can get. I like this solo mode in this. The solo mode's really good in this. But I find that I'm telling people don't play this with 2 or 3 players. And I don't say that very often about the 3 player mark. I'm saying to people, play this with 4. Now play it with 5. Because you actually, could this one do 5 on its own? I'm not entirely sure. It's not telling me on the box. No, it did 5 from the get-go, and now you can do 6. Okay, I'm not saying you need to do 6 with the expansion, honestly, but 4 to 5 players is definitely the best way to play this game, and I'll play it with 3. But you want that interaction with all the players. Here, though, there isn't a lot of interaction with the players. At all. Like, very little. In fact, the only thing that there is, oh, you took that card with some meeples on it I wanted. Oh, you took that space in the middle board that I wanted. That's about it. Whatever you do on your player board, though, is entirely your thing. Nobody else can touch it. And as such, this is a very multiplayer solitaire experience, and that hurts it quite a bit, because I wanted this to be as interactive as Architects, and it just isn't. You pretty much could not care less what the other players are doing. It's like, fine, you go build walls. I mean, I'm commissioning over here. You're not affecting me, so I'll just deal with this on my own way. It does dampen why I would bother to play this with 3 or 4 players. This works best at 2 if you want the full experience, because frankly the 3rd and 4th player don't add anything different to the game. The game scales a little bit by player, but not tons. You'll still get the same amount of experience, really. But the solo mode in this is pretty decent as well, although you have to read quite a few rules in order to figure out, Christ, how does the AI deal with all these spots on the board. It's definitely not alright, let me just learn how to play the game from the solo mode. No. You play the game first, then you play the solo mode, and even then, there's quite a bit of rules checking. I found it was a bit of a slog to get through it at first, but now I've played it enough times I can go, alright, yeah, I know how to play the solo mode now, but wasn't as intuitive as I would have thought. But it's quite ingenious how they get over the fact of what actions does the AI take. And certainly the AI is no pushover. I mean, it will beat you a decent amount of times. So it's a decent enough for a solo game, and it's certainly good as a 2-player game. But as you go up those player counts, it just loses a lot of its luster is lost by the fact that you just don't care about the other players. So why am I adding another 30, 40 minutes to this game in order to just have that other player there? It's not worth it. So that's a little bit of a downer for me, because now I'm like, well, I could play this 4-player with these people, but there's other Euro games I'd rather play with 4. In fact, why don't I just break out Architects? I would play that with 4, and I'd rather play this with 4 than I would play this with 4. So it's very much a solo or two-player game, really. 3 and 4 if you don't mind the downtime and the time length, because there is a bit of downtime here. You might have already decided, right, I'm going to do this first, and then that first, that's fine. Nobody can affect me doing it, so I'll just do it. But then you got to wait for all those players to do their various turns, and then you finish your round 2 to 3 rounds earlier than someone else, and it's just like...
Well, we're waiting.
Are we done with the round? Right. It's quite a bit of cleanup here. Get all the meeples, get them back in their pots, clear your board, get your stuff there. Right, now let's choose another paladin. Chosen? Come on. You chosen yet? You know, there's a lot of times where the game kind of grinds its gears a little bit as it goes from round to round. I certainly wouldn't call this a smooth and elegant game in its own right. There's quite a lot of rules to absorb. It's definitely a heavier game out of all the range. It's definitely not a gateway level. It's not one I would show anybody remotely new to Planes or AP prone, because this would just drive them nuts. You know, you've got to absorb quite a bit of information before the game starts in order to get used to it, and chances are someone who's played it once is going to cream you on, you know, your first try. It's just going to happen. So overall, Paladins is one that I like, but it isn't as good as I thought it was going to be. It's a little bit of a disappointment. I still enjoy it, and I still would like to play it every now and again. It will probably still stay in my collection for a little while, but again, similar to other games that I've reviewed lately, when it comes to a point salad game, I'm kind of like, well, I like this one better, you know, well, not this one, but, you know, this other point salad better, and I can get it done in less time. This is another point salad game with interesting mechanics, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is a bad game at all. I like the whole drafting a paladin at the start of the round. I like the different meeples having different colours and all like, oh right, I need this red, I need to get blue, how can I get a blue when I've only got green, you know, that kind of decision making. I like the different spaces that open up. I like all the different actions. I just wish that it was easier to do well in the game by combining whatever actions you felt like. You know, if you do 2 actions that are polar opposites, you know, that don't gel with each other, and you still win, the others literally had to have just like left the game halfway through, because I don't get how you could possibly beat them. But it's cool to have those apprentices, you know, the villagers at the top with different powers that you can activate. Even the outsiders, you know, if you attack them, you discard them for a bonus, but then if you convert them, you get some endgame scoring opportunities, which unfortunately aren't that varied either. Most of them key off your attribute tracks, or how many of a particular faction you've killed, or how many of a particular card or like action you've done. That's pretty much what the endgame scoring is for them. And to be honest, you're going to struggle to do well if you don't gain at least 1 or 2 of those. So even though that you're not focusing on converting people, you kind of need to get at least 1 or 2 really. So you find yourself pigeonholed into a few ways that you should play the game, despite the fact that this is meant to be a point salad and you can do whatever you feel like. So I do enjoy the game, but it's nowhere near as good as Raiders of the North Sea, and it's certainly nowhere near as good as Architects. You know, those two are still, in my opinion, providing you've expanded Raiders of the North Sea, both of them are still better than this one in my opinion. I'm hearing different views though with this, you know, some people are playing it and going, oh yeah, this is good, but not as good as others like me. Some of them are going, oh yeah, I love this one, this is my favourite. You know, I find that it is clearly distinguished as to which like one over the other. I think the ones that are more interested in the midway and interactive Euro games, like potentially me in a sense, go for Architects, whereas those who don't care about multiplayer solitaire, they're like, yeah, you know, people are there, I just want to play a funky, chunky Euro game, then go play Paladins, and they like this one more. Overall, gets a 7 for me, just about gets a 7, I think. You know, I'm going to hang on to this one. You know, I got it on Kickstarter. I feel I got my money's worth out of the game, but certainly maybe it would have been better to have waited on this one. I don't think it was... the anticipation after Architects, I probably set my bar a little bit too high for this one, and I had to sort of bring my expectations down. But I still think the game is solid, still think it's good. But for me, I was looking for a little bit more interaction and maybe just a little bit more variety in those paths to victory without having to do this whole seesaw thing, which, like I say, means that you're kind of stuck between going, right, well, I'm going to do this, this, or this. There's not a lot of better ways that you can really do the game otherwise. So Architects will still be the king for me, but like I say, both of them are still going to stay on my shelf. They're still very good games, Architects especially. This is a company, Garphill Games, that you really want to keep an eye on actually, because they are apart from explorers and shipwrights of the North Sea, they've done pretty well at putting out some decent games, and I look forward to seeing what the third one is in this sequence to see if they can at least do a decent trend of 3 solid games. So that's it for me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video, and regardless of whether you've stolen my red, blue, purple, yellow, blue, whatever colour Meeple, it's still only a game. Take care, and I'll see you on the next video.